Rabbi Sai. So this coming Shabbos, we're going to be learning Parshas Vayakhel and Pekudei and HaChodesh. So I want to focus on one nekuda, one lesson that we could learn from all these three Parshas. And we'll begin with Vayakhel. The Indian of Parshas Vayakhel is Moshe Rabbeinu telling Klal Yisrael the tzivui that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzaveh him to put up the Mishkan. But before he gets to the point, before he talks about the Mishkan, he prefaces that with a mitzvah of Shabbos. Actually, he doesn't preface it with a mitzvah of Shabbos, but he inserts the mitzvah of Shabbos in middle of talking about the Mishkan. What do I mean? It says, Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael vayomer aleim eile hadvarim asher tzivo Hashem lasois oisam. And the next pasuk says, Sheishes yomim teyosem malachu vayomer shvi elochem kodesh Shabbos Shabbos Hashem kol oisam b'malacha yumas. So, do the first and second pasuk b'chlal connect to each other? Shabbos, we're not talking about doing anything. The pasuk is saying Shabbos Shabbosoi. So how is this the Dvorim Asher Tzivo Hashem La'asois Oisam? So the Ibn Ezra and the Ramban say that the first pasuk really doesn't connect to the second pasuk. The first pasuk, the Dvorim Asher Tzivo Hashem La'asois Oisam, is referring to what it says two psukim later, Kach Me'itom Truma. And the entire tzivui of Binyan HaMishkan, that's the Dvorim Asher Tzivo Hashem Lasois Oisam. So Moshe Rabbeinu already in the first pasuk of Vayakhel Moshe, Es Kol Hadas B'nei Yisrael, Vayoyim Aleim, Eila HaDvorim Asher Tzivo Hashem Lasois Oisam, is already talking about the Mishkan, and then he digresses. And he says, Sheishes Yomim Tiyosem Alocha, Uvayoyim Hashvi, Shabbos Shabbosin LaHashem Elokecha. So, what's the pshat? The truth is that from this first pasuk, that as we said, is talking about the Mishkan, Eila hadvorim asher tzivo Hashem, we have a brayse in Masechtes Shabbos, Daf Sadik Zayin Amid Beis, that says, Tanya, Rebbe Omer, Dvorim, Hadvorim, Eila hadvorim, Elu lamet tes melochos, Shenemru leMoshe b'Sinai. In other words, Dvorim is two. Hadvorim adds another one to the Dvorim, which makes it three. And Eile, the numerical value of Eile is 36, Aleph Lamed Hey. So Dvorim, Hadvorim, Eile Hadvorim. From this we learn Lamed Tes Meloches. Now, so it means that the Eila HaDvarim, which is actually referring to the Dvarim that we will do in the construction of the Mishkan, from this Eila HaDvarim, we learn the Lamed Tes Malachas of Shabbos. So how's that? The emes is that it goes along with the Gemara somewhere else that says on Daf Sadik Vav and in the beginning of Bava Kama, that Hai dahave b'mishkin chashive kori le'av, Hai deloy have b'mishkin kori le'tolde. In other words, the avos melachos are the melachos that were done, according to most Rishonim, in the construction of the Mishkan. So, therefore, Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem lasis oisam could be actually a remes for the Lamed Tes Malachos, because we do learn the Lamed Tes Malachos from the Dvarim that took place in the Mishkan. Only by saying Eila Hadvarim Shesiva Hashem Lasis Oisam can we now know the meaning of the next pasuk, that Shabbos Shabbosin LaHashem Elokecha Kol Ha'isa by Melacha Mois Yumas. What's the malacha? The malacha is the Eila Hadvarim Asher Tziva Hashem Lasis Oisam in the Mishkan. There's another expression to this connection between the Mishkan and Shabbos, and that is in the end of the first parak in Bava Kama. Tanya, Niskaven Lizroik Shtayim Vizorak Arba. So you're not over on the Isser of Mavir Daladamis B'Shus Arabim if you only had the intention of Lizroik Shtayim Vizorak Arba. My time, Meleches Machsheves Osro Torah. Shabbos, there's a special halacha that it has to be a malacha with intent. Meleches Machsheves Osro Torah, and therefore Niskaven Lizroik Shtayim Vizorak Arba is potter. From where do we know that Meleches Machsheves Osro Torah? Actually, the Mishnah in Chagiga Daf Yud says that Hilchos Shabbos are harorim hatluyim b'sa'ara. They're like mountains that hang on a hair. The Gemara says, what about Hilchos Shabbos is a mountain that hangs on a hair? The Gemara says, the Meleches Machsheves lo ksiva. Doesn't say in the Torah that you need a Meleches Machsheves, and nevertheless you need a Meleches Machsheves. That's an expression of the harorim hatluyim b'sa'ara. So Rashi over there says, V'zehu remez mu'ot. It's only a remez mu'ot that you need a Meleches Machsheves. The ilu Meleches Machsheves b'Shabbos lo ksiva. It doesn't say by Shabbos Meleches Machsheves. Ulefi shesamach beParshas Vayakhel, Parshas Shabbos leMeleches HaMishkan, onu loimdim, onu lemeidin Meleches Machsheves leShabbos. So from where do we know that you need a Meleches Machsheves on Shabbos? Because it says in this week's Parsha, with regards to the Mishkan, uvecharoishes even lemalois, uvecharoishes eitz laasois, bechol Meleches Machsheves. And we say about Betzalel that he excelled in lachshoiv machshavos. So the Mishkan was Meleches Machsheves. And since the Torah was masmich, the Parsha of Shabbos to the Parsha of the Mishkan, we learn from the Mishkan to Shabbos that Meleches Machsheves Osra Torah. So it's not only the physical actions that constitute a malacha that we learn from the Mishkan from Shabbos to from the Mishkan to Shabbos, but also the intent, the Machsheves that's behind the malacha. We learn that also from the Mishkan. But what is really the meaning of the connection between the Mishkan and Meleches Shabbos? L'chorah, I mean, the fact that we refrain from doing Meleches on Shabbos is because Shabbos is a Zeicher L'Maaseh Bereishis. As it says in Parshas Kisisa, V'shomru b'nei Yisrael Sashabbos, La'asos es Hashabbos l'doiroisam bris oilam, Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael ois hi l'oilam, Ki sheishes yomim osa Hashem es hashamayim v'sa'oretz u'vayom hashvi yishovas v'yinofash. So what we're actually commemorating, so to speak, is the Shvisa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from Maaseh Bereishis. So why is it that the Shvisa is from Malachis that took place in the Mishkan? Why should Malacha in Shabbos be defined by the Malachis that were done in the Mishkan if what we're actually commemorating is HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shvisa from Brias Shamayim V'Aretz? So it's noteworthy that we do find a similarity in Loshen between the Parsha of the Mishkan and the Parsha of Maaseh Bereishis. You see, in Parshas Bereishis it says Vayar Elokim es kol asher osa v'hinei tov moi, and by the Mishkan it says Vayar Moshe es kol hamalacha v'hinei osu oisa. Kashet Tziva Hashem Kein Osu. In Parshas Bereishis it says Vayichulu Hashamayim V'Aretz V'chol Tzava Vayichal Elokim Vayom Hashvi Malachto Yasher Osa. By the Mishkan it says Vateichel Kol Avodas Mishkan Oyel Moed Vayichal Moshe Es HaMalacha. Maaseh Bereishis it says Vayivorech Elokim Es Yom Hashvi, and by the Mishkan it says Vayivorech Oisam Moshe. By Shabbos it says in the Maaseh Bereishis, Vayikadesh Oisoi. By the Mishkan it says, V'asuli Mikdosh. So it would seem like there's a connection between Maaseh Bereishis and the Mishkan. The Baal HaTurim on the Pasuk, Eila Advar Mishatziv Hashem Lasis Oisom, says that in Maaseh Bereishis, he says, and this is his Lashon, Timtza Asiyois, ubriois, umelochois, vahavayis, vahitzois, vahavdolos, kulam lametes. That if you count the amount of times that it says the word asiyo, vayas elokim, and the word bria, and the word meloche, and the word vayehi, and the words toitzoyoretz, vahitzois, vahavdolos, vayavdil, if you count them all, it adds up to lametes to 39. Loimar, lametes meloche saying chutz mitoldis. So we see that in Maaseh Bereshis Gufa, there's a remez to the Lamed Tes Malachis, meaning that in Maaseh Bereshis, we have these Lamed Tes Malachis that we later find in the Mishkan. So our malachis that we do in constructing the Mishkan parallel the malachis kaviyachol that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did in the making of Shamayim va'aretz. We have Lamed Tes, Asiyas, Brias, and Malachis, etc. in Brias Ha'olam, and we have Lamed Tes Malachis in the making of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan is not so far from Maaseh Bereshis. In other words, it's not so hard to understand why refraining from doing those Lamed Tes Malachis that we did in the Mishkan is a way to commemorate the Shvisa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Brias Shemayim V'Aretz. But what does this all mean? You know, the Gemara in Brachas Daf Nun Hey Amid Aleph says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Yoideya hoya b'tzalel l'tzaref oisiyos shenivru bohen Shemayim V'Aretz. Not only that we don't know how to do that, we don't even know what that means, but B'tzalel knew the tzirufei oisiyos. Yoideya hoya b'tzalel l'tzaref oisiyos shenivru bohen Shemayim V'Aretz. Ksiv hoche, it says in Parshas Pekudei, Vayamalei ois in Parshas Vayakhel, Vayamalei oisoi ruach Elokim b'chochma, b'svuna uvedas. So we use three expressions of wisdom, b'chochma, b'svuna, v'das. Uksiv hasam in Mishlei it says, L'gabe brias ha'olam, Hashem b'chochma yiseid oretz, koinein shomayim b'svuna, and bedaitoi nivku sahoimos. So we find these three lashonis of chochma, tfuna, and das in Maaseh Bereshis, and we find these three expressions by Betzalel, who builds the Mishkan. So we see that the building of the Mishkan parallels somehow Maaseh Shemayim V'Aretz. The Gemara in Megillah Daf Yud brings a brayse Tanya Oisei Hayoim, that the day of Hakamas HaMishkan, Oisei Hayoim Hoisa Simcha L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ki Yoim Shenivru Boi Shemayim V'Aretz. Ksiv Hoche Vayehi Bayoim Hashmini, Uksiv Hasam Vayehi Erev Vayehi Boiker. So we make a Gzeira Shava Vayehi, and Hoisa Simcha L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ki Yoim Shenivru Boi Shemayim V'Aretz. So the Mishkan somehow is as great as Maaseh Shemayim V'Aretz. The Midrash Tanchuma in this week's in Parshas Pekudei says, which actually mentions some of those lashonis that we said before. Amar Reb Yaakov b'Rebbi Asi, Lama hu oimer Hashem ohavti ma'oim beisecha u'mekoim mishkan kvoidecha b'shvil sheshokul keneged brias olam, because the Mishkan kvoidecha is shokul keneged brias olam. And how do we know that? Says the Medrash, b'shvi, it says vayichulu hashamayim, u'b'mishkan vateichel kol avodas, b'brias olam ksiv vayivorech Elokim, u'b'mishkan ksiv vayivorech oisam Moshe. So what does this all mean? It would seem that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a space for us, and we parallel that by creating a space for him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol was mitzamtzeim his gilui, as the Mekubalim say, tzimtzum is contracted himself and created a cholol ponui, created a space for us. And we need to contract ourselves and create a space for the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's the meaning of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan does actually parallel Bria Shemayim V'Aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a place for us, and we make a place for him. It's interesting that the Torah dedicates only 31 psukim to the story of creation. If you count in the psukim of Shabbos, of the Yom HaShvi, it adds up to 34 psukim. Whereas the Mishkan, the Torah dedicates 450 psukim. In Parshas Truma, Tetzaveh, part of Kisisa, and Vayakhel and Pekudei, we have 450 psukim about the Mishkan. So, the big world gets 31 or 34 psukim, and the small world, in other words, the miniature replica of Shemayim V'Aretz, the microcosm that we create, gets 450 psukim. What does that mean? That brings us to Parshas HaChodesh. The first Rashi in Chumash says, on the pasuk Bereshis Bara Elokim, Amar Rabbi Yitzchok lo yhoyot tzorich lahaschil, elo me'achodesh hazeh lochem, shehi mitzvah rishonos shenitztavu bo Yisrael, u'ma tam pasuk beBereshis. So Chazal are bothered. Even those few psukim that the Torah does dedicate to Bria Shemayim V'Aretz, Chazal say are superfluous. What do we need them for? And we excuse the Torah by saying that, because if Umas will claim that Eretz Yisrael is theirs, we'll say Hu B'Rav, Hu Nasan Alonu. But Be'etzem, we don't even understand why the Torah has even 31 or 34 psukim on Shemayim V'Aretz. So it's astounding. In other words, that even these few psukim, Chazal are not willing to understand why we have it. So Torah is a lashon of Hayrah. It's a teaching, it's a lesson to teach us how to fulfill our mission, how to give our life meaning. Mitzvah Rishayna Shenitztavu, that's where Torah begins. So the Mishkan that we create for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taka small. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Its parameters are small, but it's huge in terms of it being the Tachlis Maisei Shomayim V'Aretz. The entire big world was created only for those small malachis that we do for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So what seems small is really big, and what's big is really only in order to enable those small doings that we do. Bereshis bara Elokim is b'chlal a shvera pasuk, because before the bara there was no time. So in the beginning of what did Hashem create the world? Rashi already says, Ein ha-mikra hazeh oimer elo darshuni. Rashi, the Greis Baal Pshat, says that al pi pshat, he can't explain the pasuk of Bereshis bara Elokim. The Goyen in the Siddur of the Goyen on the Baruch Shomar, on the bracha where we say Baruch Oisei Bereshis, he says that time is the first creation. And Baruch Oisei Bereshis means that Hashem made Bereshis. In other words, he made beginning. It's not the beginning of something. In other words, the reading of the pasuk Bereshis bara Elokim, according to this, is Bereshis bara Elokim. That Bereshis, Hashem created Bereshis. In other words, Hashem created time. But that time of Bereshis is lo yhoyot tzorich lahaschil, because the time of Bereshis bara Elokim, that's the clock on the wall. That's history, his story. The hachodesh hazeh lochem, that's my story. That's mystery. Because harashus nesuna, we have choice. we could make our life meaningful and we could kill time, as they say, right? So we transform time. We make time, we give time its meaning. Like Chazal say that Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim is not considered a chasima betarti because it's the kachinu Yisrael, the kachinu l'zmanim. Yidden sanctify time. And that's the hachodesh hazeh lochem. We were given the ability to give time meaning. So therefore, that's really the Hascholas HaTorah. The Hascholas HaTorah is not the Bereshis Bara Elokim. That's his business. Our business is Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chadosh Mitzvah Rishona Shenitztavu B'Yisrael. And in this Parsha of Hachodesh appear all the mitzvahs of Pesach. It's connected to the Parsha of Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chadoshim. The Sforno says because an Eved has no time of his own. He's completely meshubed to his Adon. His time is not his. So only Bnei Chorin, with Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Hachodesh Hazeh becomes Lochem. We take control over time. There's another meaning to this because, as you know, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says in a poem, Avdei Hazman, Avdei Avodim Heim. The slaves of time are Avdei Avodim. Eved Hashem, hu levadoi chofshi. What does this mean? It could be because, normally we talk about enslavement, we talk about being enslaved by somebody else. But one can also be enslaved by himself, meaning he's enslaved by his past. He has a lot of baggage that holds him down. He doesn't have the ability to realize his potential today because of his past that's haunting him. And because of his past that taught him, so to speak, that he's inadequate, that he's not capable, that he can't really do what he ought to do. And that's the Avdei Hazman. You're enslaved by time, meaning that you don't have the ability to be mischadesh, to reinvent yourself. And that's the Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chadoshim, which is the Parsha of Geulas Mitzrayim, is that one could redeem himself by Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem, not to be an Eved of my yesterday, but to make my today a new today. As we say, the Levana, we say, is an Ateres Tiferes, La'amusei Boten, Shehem Asidim Lehischadesh Kemoisa. The Levana every month has a Moilad. It's reborn. Moilad al-Levana. It's reborn. And so also a Yid has the ability to become reborn. And not to be Meshubet to his past, not to be Avdei Hazman, Avdei Avodim Heim, but to realize his potential here and now. As we say, Im loy achshav emosai. So the pshat is that it's not that the natural time is cyclical, and we go in circles. I mean, there's an aviv, there's a kotzer, there's an asif. I mean, the agricultural seasons go in circles, and as the pasuk says in Koheles, that ma shehoyo hu sheyeh ve'ein kol chodosh tachas hashemesh. But that's nature. But a human being who has a tselem Elokim has the ability to break out of the constraints of natural time and to live a life of Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem, even though Ein Kol Chodosh Tachas Hashemesh, but Hey Masidim Lehischadesh, like the Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem, which is to which is to tap into the ability that we have to renew ourselves and not to be Avdei Azman. Okay, Rabbi say, I think that we didn't say it all, but we said enough for now. Enough for now. If anybody wants to comment, Rabbi say, I want to wish you all, first of all, a good chodesh, because we're about to enter the HaChodesh, Hazeh Lochem, Rosh Chadoshim, Rishon Hu Lochem, L'Chodshei Hashana, and we should be zocher to connect with the Ha'oris of Chodesh Nisan, which is a Chodesh of Geula Seinu, B'dus Nafshenu, and we should be able to renew ourselves and not to live off the past and not to be haunted by the past, but to become what we could become here and now and today. Rabbi Say,